This magnificent Gothic building is located in West London. And I wonder if you can guess its relevance to the band. Yes, this house is called Strawberry Hill, and it was the home of Horace Walpole, who bought it in 1757, and he was the dilettante son of Robert Walpole, the British Prime Minister at the time. It was considered to be one of the finest homes of the Gothic revival, and it gave its name to this whole area, Strawberry Hill. We used to rehearse just round the corner. We didn't have a name at the time. Somebody came up with the idea, let's call ourselves the Strawberry Hill Boys. So we did. I'd like to take you around and just show you some of the places we used to play in those very early days. Well, believe it or not, this used to be my old school, and in case any of you get the wrong idea and think that somewhere along the line I might have had a sex change, let me reassure you that when I was there it was called Thames Valley Grammar School, and it was a mixed school. Come inside and have a look. Well, and this is the corridor I walked down on my first day at senior school, absolutely scared stiff. There was the assembly hall here, and this is one of the classrooms we used to use. Tony Hooper and I discovered we both had an interest in skiffle. We bought guitars on the same day, and we used to play in here at lunchtimes. The headmaster described it as witch music. How do you think we felt about his song that he wrote as the school anthem? Amid the Grecian mountains where loud Eurytus rolls, and lordly Lacedaemon the Spartan plain controls, word of the poet came that set our youth aflame. You have Sparta for your birthplace, do honour to his name, Hanc exona. Well, I reckon I prefer the Strawberry Hill Boys any day. The British Motor Yacht Club, where we made our first ever performance as schoolboy skifflers, the Gin Bottle 4. And people kept bringing us beer all night. We'd never seen so much beer. And at the end of the evening, they gave us a £5. £5. And we woke up the next day with an appalling hangover, but with that £5. And we decided that's what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives. I'm going to go outside and have a look on the balcony and look down the river towards Eel Pie Island. And here I am on the balcony of the British Motor Yacht Club overlooking Teddington Lock, called Teddington after Tide End Town, the highest tidal point on the River Thames. And just down the Thames, just a short boat trip away, is Eel Pie Island. Eel Pie Island in Twickenham was so called because it was where Henry VIII used to stop off for an eel pie on his way down to Hampton Court Palace. But perhaps Eel Pie Island is best known as the home of British R&B, rhythm and blues. It was here that Long John Baldry and the Hoochie Coochie Men with Rod Stewart and Julie Driscoll first started to play. It was here that the Graham Bond organisation played with Jack Bruce on bass. I was lucky because I got a job running the cloakroom. And imagine my surprise one day when Arthur Chisnall, the owner of the club, asked me if the Strawberry Hill Boys would support a new band that he'd just booked for the next 6 weeks called the Rolling Stones. It was mayhem. The Stones created absolute mayhem. And there we were going on with banjo, guitar and mandolin in the intervals. I shall never forget that Brian Jones once said to me, "Love your music, man." Eel Pie Island, in the history of the Strawberry Hill Boys, can never be overlooked, and I can assure you it'll never be forgotten.
Well, sadly I missed the heyday of the Eel Pie Island fun, but I did see some bands at the Ricky Tick Club in Hounslow. It was above Tesco's, just by the bus garage, in between where Lambert and Cousins and myself lived. And I saw some wonderful groups. I saw the Yardbirds, Steam Packet with Rod Stewart and Long John Baldry.
I saw Hendrix, The Who many times.
Cream, I saw the Jeff Beck Band.
Small Faces. John Mayall, every 2 weeks I saw John Mayall in Hounslow.
I saw a wonderful incarnation of the Yardbirds, which was Jimmy Page on bass, would you believe?
There was a band probably for every day of the year.
And in the meantime, I was learning guitar on my first guitar, which I received when I was 14 on my 14th birthday, 40 years ago.
The London Apprentice on the banks of the River Thames at Isleworth is one of the loveliest pubs in London, if not in the whole country. And it was here that we used to come every Friday night to play our guitars and banjos with a group of like-minded people. There was Ron Kane and Don and Audrey Leatherbarrow, who got a deal with HMV and formed themselves into the Messengers. There was Arthur Phillips, who played mandolin and actually joined the lineup of the Strawberry Hill Boys in our first incarnation. And then there was Johnny Joyce, who joined up with Richard Hudson and John Ford as the Velvet Opera. And it was here that we came back to several years later to take the cover shot for the album Antiques and Curios. There's Tony Hooper, Rick Wakeman, myself sitting in the same chair that I was sitting in all those years ago, Richard Hudson and John Ford. And there's that same plaque up on the wall commemorating the ringing of 5,093 changes of peals of bells on February the 10th, 1848. And it was right here, after one of our Friday night sessions, that Arthur Phillips, our mandolin player at the time, decided to try out his new Land Rover. He drove down the slipstream and decided to drive onto the island behind me. In midstream, he changed into four-wheel drive and stalled the engine. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the tide came up and covered his Land Rover up. And then, to add indignity to indignities, along came the Port of London Authority and put a wreck buoy on top. The next morning, Arthur came down, hired a lorry, towed his poor old Land Rover out of the stream. He emptied the carburettor, pushed a button, and believe it or not, it started up. But by God, didn't it smell for weeks afterwards when we were going to gigs. And look at that, the Canada geese have decided to come out and have a look where it happened. The White Bear was where it all came together. It was here that we started a folk club. It was here that we had the arts lab on alternate Tuesday evenings. I remember a table over there one Sunday lunchtime where I sat with Sandy Denny and Mike Seeger, Pete Seeger's brother, and we just swapped songs. There was hardly anybody in the bar. We were just having a good time singing. But other times we had David Bowie, the Spiders from Mars, believe it or not, before they ever hit the Hammersmith Odeon. Every now and then Rick Wakeman would come down on a Sunday lunchtime and play the piano and read the most obscene poems that anybody has ever heard. But they were just great fun. And it was here I met Dave Lambert, who played here with his band Fire.
I did. Not only that, I started here because one Saturday evening I got a phone call from a friend of mine asking me if I was doing anything and if I could come down and play guitar because the accordion player had let them down. Anyway, I came down and we played, just made a few things up, and from then we decided to form a band which became Friday's Child at first, and then that eventually became Fire. And we played here many times. I was quite reluctant at first to come back here because I'd been banned for fighting outside the pub on Saturday evening. Then one night in a folk club that Brian was running, I went to see a band called the Strawberry Hill Boys.
We actually paid him £8, would you believe? But the thing is,
Generous.
Yeah, very generous, I thought. I'd been watching the Strawberry Hill Boys for 3 or 4 years before that. Every Thursday evening I used to get my homework done as quickly as possible and rush down here with a couple of pals from school to watch the Strawberry Hill Boys, which was Dave Cousins, Tony Hooper and Ron Chesterman on double bass. And they had frequent guests, people like Ralph McTell, Whiz Jones, Bert Jansch, and all the sort of formative acoustic guitar players that I really enjoyed. And at the time I was playing electric guitar and became very influenced with Dave's Gibson J45 and Ralph McTell's J45, and sold the electric guitar and started playing acoustic, and didn't start playing electric again until I was about 25.
Yeah, electric guitars, acoustic guitars, the White Bear had the lot. It didn't matter what you played, it was the way you played it that mattered. And it really was the central clearinghouse for an awful lot of musicians in West London. Probably one of the most significant places in the whole of West London in its day. It's a place we come back to whenever we go out on tour again, just to warm up. We feel comfortable here. It really is a marvellous place to come to. The dear old White Bear in Kingsley Road, Hounslow. So there we are, from the Strawberry Hill Boys to the Strawbs. And I've often been asked to describe our music. And with songs like Hero and Heroine and Ghosts, I usually say Gothic rock. And what better place to have started out than here, the home of the Gothic revival, Strawberry Hill.